It's time for another district breakdown. We got Digsy as usual. We got the Wizard. We're talking 5-6A. This is the district that had the Louisville squads, and we had Plano teams last year. The Plano ISD teams move up a district, and now we have the Denton teams. It's like a nice little 3-for-3 trade there. And because of that, Capel, who I was thinking was a huge front runner, they still probably are a huge front runner because of what they did last year and because of graduation, some big skill position players at Louisville. Now maybe they are. Maybe it's head and head with Geyer because Geyer brings back Kevin Speary. He crosses over the Red River and comes back down to North Texas where he belongs. He's throwing around there. They got Cobbs. They got a Caden Cobbs running back in there. Every time there's Cobbs there, something special happens. Talk about this district, and is it cut and dry for you, or is it up in the air?
When we'll kind of pull back the curtain, Ward, because you and I like to fight with things. And I know when I sent you my rankings to be released, you did not like the fact that Denton Geyer. You thought Denton Geyer was a little bit low. You're already
Real
kind of
low.
alluding to that. You're thinking Denton Geyer is the team. Coppell is kind of the team that I'm adopting as I think it has the chance to make that next step this year. I mean, Edward Griffin is probably, for me, he's got that intangible of being a special quarterback. I saw an interview that he did with TexasFootball.com, and he talked about how much Edward Griffin prepares. And like this kid loves to study film. It's like he is just absolutely committed to football. He's committed to Baylor now, but he's committed to football, and he loves researching it. And he is such a playmaker. Last year, I saw him in person against Plano East, and he actually got poked in the eye at some point. And the way Coppell played before, you couldn't stop him. Like Coppell just right up and down the field. There was not a throw he could not make. He got his eye poked, and all of a sudden it became a 50-50 game. Now, the score was still, because they didn't get stopped in the beginning, Coppell won that game handily. But Coppell is such a better team with Edward Griffin, and I love this team because of him. And if he can stay healthy, I think Coppell has a really, really good chance to go as far as they can go. I mean, potentially going to the state semifinals and winning the region. And because they got a lot of players coming back too. They got Amari and Mobaki at running back. I really like their defense. I know you always talk about defense, Ward. We talk about all these offensive stars, but Weston Polk, an incredible linebacker, and we got a fishpaw on there. We had a couple of years ago, we had a
That's
fishpaw at
right.
quarterback. Now we got a fishpaw at defensive back. Scott Fishpaw is there with Alex Kraus. This is a team that has a lot of depth, and I like them. But Denton Geyer, when you look at Denton Geyer, I talk about all these players and Edward Griffin. Yeah, he's a college player, but almost all the players we're going to talk about with Denton Geyer have got college offers. So Denton Geyer is basically, they call it Geyer University at times, and you can see why because of all the players that got commit. Kevin Sperry is on his third home in 3 years for whatever reason. He's got this little triangle from Prosper up to Oklahoma and back to Denton Geyer, and who knows where next year will be. I guess it'll be in college next year, but he's going to be a very special player there. He was very talented. I got to see him as a sophomore at Prosper Rock Hill, and now we get to see him as a senior. I can see why you're optimistic on Denton Geyer. You talked about Caden Cobbs. But Kyron Haywood is blowing up the recruiting talk. He has been offered by everybody: LSU, A&M, Texas, a very game-changing defensive lineman. You got Caden Cobbs coming back, who's been offered by Baylor and Nebraska. Ahmed Yusuf, Corbin Glasgow, the wide
Yeah.
receiver, Jackson
Big.
Shockley. There are pieces there for Denton Geyer, which I can see exactly why you think that they can beat Coppell. And regardless of whether you pick, these are two top 10 area teams and state ranked teams that can make big playoff runs. And I think they're a clear number 1 and 2, which we have talked about half this campfire already. And Louisville is the team that everybody was
Exactly.
talking about last year. We haven't mentioned them. And I think Louisville is going to take a very big step back. I think they are still a playoff team, but I think they are well below that state ranked conversation. They have a quarterback last year who played as a freshman every now and then, kind of spelling the quarterback, Trey Williams. And I think he actually transferred from Geyer a couple of years ago in getting into the Louisville program. A lot of people are talking about him like as an eighth grader, as a player, the next player to watch for Geyer. And now he's over at Louisville as a sophomore. And they do got two offensive linemen coming back. They've got Michael Fasusi and Malachi McLennan. But who is that big tier one running back. They've had like that
Right.
tier one running back for the last 3 years. They don't have that right now. And Sean Oliver on the defensive side of the ball is an absolute game changer. But for me, who's going to be the player who's going to be that running back who's going to give them that consistency? I don't see it, which is why I've got them a little bit below that top tier, with Geyer and Coppell being a clear tier one kind of
And
kind of stuff.
we were underwhelmed last year. I mean, we
Yeah.
especially after all the talk we did in our preseason stuff on them, and they came out, didn't really show up that well against Highland Park, and I think they beat Marcus 14-3 or something like that. It was a really low scoring game, lost to Capel, and kind of bowed out early in the playoffs. We were pretty down on them the whole year. We were just hoping at some point they'd turn it on. It didn't really happen. So maybe this year, without the expectations, maybe they will step it up a little bit. But that leaves one last playoff spot. If you're saying those three make it, I don't even know if you've committed to Louisville making the playoffs, but I think
Committing
you
to
have.
Louisville. Right now,
Okay,
I'm putting it
committed.
on. You got the podcast. I commit to the Louisville Fighting Farmers making the playoffs.
Well, who do we think is the last team in there? Because you look at Hebron, they were up and down, and Marcus made the playoffs mainly because they came back from 27-7 to Hebron at home and ended up winning that thing in overtime by blocking an extra point, and that gave them their fourth win to get in there.
But yeah, you got Nussmeier in there. Brock Golis is a player I've mentioned the last 2 years. He's been a player that I've been really impressed by. He's a senior this year. I think he's going to be a game changer on both sides of the ball. You got Isaiah Kelakipi, who is a really talented running back who really made his name last year. They've got the pieces on the offensive side of the ball. And defensively, I've never worried about Marcus. They've always got a big defensive line. Tony Lee is going to be the leader there. So I think Marcus is the leader of that next tier. But all of these teams are good. I mean, we've seen it with Louisville ISD. You get Flower Mound and Marcus playing in the Mound Showdown, flip a coin, because you never know what's going to happen in that game. And then Hebron and Marcus, you talked about how crazy that game was last year. And I know you love Patrick Creighton. You want to talk about Patrick Creighton, the quarterback.
Yeah, let's talk about
got a
Cowboys.
Cowboys kid in there, and he breeds football. You got Ison Jones McCray coming back at running back, but Hebron I think has really been struggling in that depth. It's weird to say in Louisville because these are all 3,000 student schools other than the Colony in Louisville ISD, but they've been struggling with football numbers and depth from my perception the last couple of years. They didn't make the playoffs. They beat Plano East and didn't find a way to make the playoffs last year. In Plano East defeated all these Flower Mound teams. Ward took care of them. I really like Denton Braswell too. I think Denton Braswell is going to be part of this conversation. Running backs, they have 2,000 yards of rushing coming back, and Moses Adalowo and Jeremiah Shipp, 17 touchdowns between those two players, and Chris Johnson, who had 550 yards last year and 5 touchdowns. Jeremiah Shipp is coming back at quarterback, but Braswell's problem has been what you kind of talked about. They've got that Crowley problem. Can they stop anybody? And I haven't seen any evidence to indicate that they can. So I think they're going to be playing in a lot of shootouts, which is really going to, kind of make it come to turnovers and a bounce here and there with Braswell. But I think in Flower Mound, you got Carter Massey coming back. Very talented wide receiver. Elijah Lunke is coming back. But who's going to throw the ball around in Flower Mound, Ward?
I don't know. We got to figure that out. We got to figure out. He's going to stand upright because Drew Evers is out there. But who's going to throw it around to him? I don't know who that guy's going to be. And then we got Little Elm.
Jokels. You had the Jokel.
That's
family,
right.
you
From
had
Arlington.
The quarterback, and you got the offensive lineman. And
Luke
with
and
this,
Matt.
you got Evers, who's got the quarterback, and the little brother, who's the big brother, really, with who's a huge offensive lineman recruit.
Absolutely. That leaves us with Little Elm. What are we going to do with them? I mean, they only got the one win last year.
Oliver put up some nice numbers, but I think they're going to really struggle at the bottom of this district this year. But it's fun. This is going to be a fun district because I think you've got 4 teams legitimately fighting for that 4th playoff spot. So we talk about the teams that can qualify for the playoffs. I think 7 of the 8 teams can come into the preseason thinking that they have a chance to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I feel like the way you're talking, that Capella and Geyer will fight for a district title. Louisville's in, and then the rest of them will fight for that last spot, which should be interesting. But I'm gonna go ahead and let you give me 1 through 8.
Got Coppell number 1, Denton Geyer number 2, Fighting Farmers number 3, Marcus at number 4, Hebron number 5, Braswell number 6, the Jaguars of Flower Mound, I've got them number 7, and Little Elm, I've got them number 8.